Welcome students, welcome to this presentation on gains from trade. Is trade beneficial to all countries involved? Does trade also pose some disadvantage to the participating countries? Do countries mutually benefit from trade? And if they mutually benefit from trade, do they benefit at the same level? Or does it mean that one of the trading partners gains more than the other trading partner? Well, what we observe in the world is that the gains from trade can never be the same for all trading partners. Some will gain more than the other. But what we also know is some trade is better than no trade at all. Looking at this process of trade, a country has got a comparative advantage in the production of some good. It identifies that. It diverts resources into the production of those goods, those narrow range of goods. Then it makes a larger output because there is specialization. Then it looks for a market and becomes efficient in the production of that particular good. In return, the country would get revenue, and this money is used by the country to import the necessary goods, the raw materials, and it also buys goods that the nation does not produce. It also helps in providing employment opportunities to its people. Trade also helps the multiplier and accelerator to operate within the country and helps in the development and growth of countries. In Ricardo's words, under a system of perfectly free commerce, each country naturally devotes its capital and labor to such employments as are most beneficial to each. So each country will use its resources to what it can benefit from that. Now, when each country does what is good for itself, then the idea is the world would be a better place because more goods will be traded and every country would benefit from trading with each other. Let us now explain the gains from trade using diagrams. Essentially, there are two benefits that come from trade. These arise from specialization that happens because of trade and also because of exchange that takes place between the two countries. International trade has got some very interesting and complicated diagrams, and it is necessary that um, an idea is followed up with rigor so that conceptually the idea is clear, and then you can choose any one of the diagram which suits your way of thinking. Now, to understand this particular diagram, we can see that on the vertical axis I have used machinery, and on the horizontal axis I have put agriculture commodities. I have used a production possibility curve AB. Now, the production possibility curve indicates to the supply side of the economy. Next, I have used the community indifference curve CIC. Community indifference curve is an extension of the application of the idea of indifference curve analysis. And there is a price line. Now, let's get into the diagram. The production possibility curve is AB, and this AB, the production possibility curve, we have used when we were explaining in another video on the basic problems of an economy. So with the scarce resources that the country has, the country can produce OA of A or OB of B if all the resources are diverted only to the production of A or B. Now we know that no country will produce only A or only B. That is, no country will produce only machinery or only agriculture commodity. It will produce a combination of machinery and agriculture commodities. Thus, we find that to get to that position, we need to use the community indifference curve. Community indifference curve is what the consumers will purchase as a combination of two goods, machinery and agriculture commodities. The consumer community indifference curve is tangent to the production possibility curve at point R. So at point R, the country produces OM of machinery and OA of agriculture commodities. Let us assume that the country is um, mm, rich in resources that are necessary for producing agriculture commodities. We also introduce the price line, which is at it is also tangent to the production possibility curve at point R. So the country produces OM of machinery and OA of goods. Now, if the country wants to have more machinery, then it has given up more and more large number of agriculture commodities. Assuming that this country is rich in producing agriculture commodities or has comparative advantage in the production of agriculture commodities, how would the country gain from this trade? Let us see this. Given to do this, we need to draw another community indifference curve much higher than the original community indifference curve, which is the new one is CIC2. Now, what does the CIC2 mean here? CIC2 curve is far beyond the production possibility curve of the country. Production possibility is only AB, but the community requires goods like at point P. Now, how can the country produce and give goods at P when its production possibility stops at R? Here is the position for trade. So what the country will do is the country will enter into trade and import from the other country. How much will it import? It can now go to the community indifference curve CIC2 and be at a point P. Now, how does it reach at a point P? The country now decides not to produce so much of machinery. Instead, it will now specialize in the production of agriculture where it has got a comparative advantage. So the price line has moved away from PP1 to TT1. It has become much more vertical and it is now tangent to the CIC2 at point P. So when it is at point P, that means the consumers are able to get much greater units of machine than the amount of machine it was able to consume or produce at home. So reaching at P is possible only by importing that amount of goods in the country. So it is producing much greater, it is importing a larger quantity of goods that it does not produce without moving the production frontier to the right. And on the other hand, now the country will produce more of commodity, agriculture commodity at point S. So it means that the possibility for the country to produce more is within this production of agriculture commodities, and it can import that much quantity of machinery from by trading with another country. Now, with trade, in principle, it is possible that each individual can have more of both goods. Otherwise, there is a limit to which the country can have these two goods. Now, trade potentially expands the economy's choices. Definitely, this was not possible if the country had not traded with other. If we look at the kind of commodities that we consume in our day-to-day life, we will realize that many of the commodities that we consume are not produced in a country. These are all imported from different parts of the world. But as consumers, we are enjoying the consumption of those goods because we are able to import those goods from other country. There is also better utilization of scarce resources. Now, when we talk about gains from trade, they are usually categorized into two: static gains from trade and dynamic gains from trade. Let's look at static gains from trade, essentially related to the issues of efficiency, and these changes can happen even in the short run. The countries gain from increased consumption, therefore, there is increased utility and it improves the welfare of the people. Consumers gain through lower prices, and also this lower price means their real income increases. There is better allocation of scarce resources. There is a gain in the productive efficiency of the country. There is maximization of production and there is division of labor. All these things can happen even in the short run. There is cheaper input cost now because they can import the raw material from the necessary raw material from outside rather than buying those costly raw material if at all available from home, which will in many ways reduce the cost of production and therefore it can export at a cheaper price into the world market. There is also this idea that there are idle resources in the country if trade does not take place. There could be natural resources, there could be the other factors of production. So, all of these idle resources can be put into production and therefore find a market. So, these are known as the static gains from trade. The dynamic gains of trade are considered to be in the long run. Over a period of time, when countries engage in trade, there are changes that take place on a continual basis. We can see that in the case of India itself, how when the economy opened up in the early 90s, what kind of changes took place in the country, and how those changes have continued to take place even today. The first thing that happens is there is a widening of the market. The production frontiers of the country will expand. It will move outward because the economy is able to produce more. And when the country is able to produce more, the consumers are also benefiting from that because they are now able to get a larger variety of commodities at a lower price, of a better quality, of taste and preferences that are current in the world. And also, they gain from higher wages because of higher productivity. Now, we have seen that today in the country, what we consume in terms of clothing or in terms of many commodities are up to the requirements of the international markets. So those who have the money to buy those kind of goods are also available in the country. So good, the consumers benefit when countries trade with each other. There are economies of scale that companies enjoy because now they are producing in larger quantities. When they produce in larger quantities, there is better utilization of the plant capacity, and the firms begin to enjoy the economies of scale in the economy itself. Trade also allows the import of capital goods and earn valuable foreign exchange. By using the foreign exchange, it is able to import the necessary capital equipment for the goods that it has chosen to produce. It can procure the raw material that it may require for producing those goods for export, or it can also help in removing the various kind of constraints on building the sound economic infrastructure that may be required to export goods into the international market. International trade also results in investments and it encourages the setting up of ancillary units. Large number of firms that are catering to the export market will also find itself requiring a lot of components or ancillary items. And these smaller or medium scale industries grow up to cater to this export market. At the same time, there are packaging industries and there are transport industries that grow as forward linkages. So trade with other countries help the development of backward linkages and forward linkages. So it also increases market contestability. Now, what happens is when import doesn't take place, the domestic industries become monopoly power, and this monopoly power we know has got a serious adverse consequences on consumers. So when there are import firms provide a large number of import firms providing those goods, then This also can reduce the power of other countries having control over us. At the same time, in the domestic market, when there are a lot of firms producing the goods, then this competition of will increase, and because of increased competition, this monopoly power that is there for any one firm will be reduced. Also, there is also the benefit of inefficient firms closing down, because once we get into the free market and the market mechanism takes over, then those firms which are not able to compete in the international market will eventually close down and save resources for the country. Development of related activities. There are many activities that are necessary for developing the export sector of the country. This includes the building of infrastructure facilities, power, industrial centers, pollution control systems, and all of that. Now, it also means that there is a need for the growth of primary raw material within the country. New kinds of crops may be grown to meet the export requirement. There would be more requirement for food because there is more increased income of the people, and also the tertiary sector will grow because banks will have to meet these international requirements. So we can see that after 1991, the number of multinational banks that have started operating in the country. So we now have banks which are especially trading with exports itself. So we have communication system. Look at the digital world that we are living by. Say about 25 years ago, the internet technology was just at its early stages, but today there can be no trade that can take place without internet technology. So how digital technology has developed over the years and how rapidly it has developed, it has influenced all our economic and social life. So, how these international trade allows the banking sector, the communication sector, the insurance. Look at the growth of the insurance in the past 30 years. Enormous increase in the activities of the insurance sector and many allied activities. All of them have grown because of the international trade that is happening in the country. Development of technology is another important area that accrues to a country when a country enters into trade. Technology, because we need to learn newer methods of production, new technical know-how, then develop managerial talents to handle different parts of the world, their culture, their production processes, their laws, the kind of people. All of this requires learning a lot of managerial skills. So managerial talent develops. Then there is an increase in the world stock of productivity. It is not only for India that we have to develop it. All parts of the world that are trading with each other, they develop very high managerial skill because of these kind of things. Also, the education sector, education training sector completely overhauls itself because it has to meet the needs of these growing trade between countries. In the 80s, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was computer, which was a necessary skill for young people. Now, today, a computer is known to everybody. So, how the technology has brought in that change, how the mobile technology has changed everybody. So, how banking has changed, and all of this has happened because of technological know how. So today, the kind of jobs that are emerging are not no longer in the traditional areas. There are many new areas that have emerged. For example, the study of data, the amount of data that is now generated because of the use of internet technology, mobile technology. Now, all these data can be analyzed. So, how the growth of the economy has of our employment has moved from one kind of activities to the other. So there is a skill upgradation also that is taking place in the world. There is an entry of firms, there are exit of firms, many firms have died, many new firms have come up. Because of this firms exit and entry, new kinds of jobs have come up. There are a lot of destruction of old jobs, many new kinds of jobs are on the end. So, seeing all these things, we can understand that there are a lot of changes that have taken place, and countries have benefited immensely because of trade. So trade has also had advantage for less developed countries because these less developed countries were able to get this knowledge or the technology at a much later date, when already developed countries have tried with it, they have failed with it, and or they have succeeded with it. That is why Haberler makes this point. The latecomers and successors in the process of development and industrialization have always had the great advantage that they could learn from the experience of success and failures and mistakes of the pioneers and forerunners. So the risk takers have been outside. They have started off the use of technology, and developing countries like India, we have immensely benefited from trade by learning technology after it has many of the technologies got established in the world over. So this kind of change that has happened into these countries are the gains, dynamic gains from trade, because as the economy keeps moving, there are gains that are happening to the countries. It allows these countries to escape the vicious circle of poverty, and because after the 1991 trade opening up of the country, several backward linkages opened up because many individuals were employed by firms outside of the country. Their incomes rose. When their incomes rose, the many other kinds of sectors grew up. The informal sector was one of them, which grew up very rapidly during that time, and many people got out of the poverty during that phase, and it lasted for quite a period. For quite a time, that the economy was able to provide jobs of all kinds of jobs for the educated, less educated, and the highly educated. Everybody was able to do that. So for the lower rung of people, they were able to get out of this vicious circle of poverty. It helps in the economic growth of the country because now governments have to make macroeconomic policies to suit this growth of foreign trade. It has to adhere to international agreements. It has to prevent, or it has to take caution to prevent the flight of capital from the country. It has to kind of monitor the kind of economic activities that are happening in the country. So there are macroeconomic issues that the governments also have to concentrate to help this country to trade. And the last one is that of Dennis Robertson, which is a very famous quote and often asked as a question: trade as an engine of growth. Why is trade an engine of growth? Trade pushes the economy, trade carries the economy forward. The many things that I have just shared with you, all of them result in larger production, specialization, skill development, investment, saving, in then the rate of, and with all of this, that the rate of growth would also grow. But there are certain disadvantages also we know that trade can bring in. For example, the one of the thing is the pandemic, how a disease that started in one country has spread on to the countries of the world. But so the benefits are also like that. It accrues, it starts from one country, the benefits are enjoyed unequally. Of course, they are not equal to all countries. Some countries enjoy more benefits, some countries get less benefit, but they all gain from trade. If they were not gaining from, if they were not trading with each other, they would not have gained at all. So now they gain from trade, but it is not the same for all participating countries. International trade, besides the economic effects, has got social and political importance. And we now know that many of our social customs and habits and mm, practices have undergone change. It could be from the many activities that, for example, the use of mobile itself, how it has revolutionized the way we socialize with people, how we visit people, how we treat relationships. Now, these are all things that have happened because of the digital technology that has come to a large extent. We also find that politically, how the political space has become so politically competitive because the information just passes on from one to the other through the digital media. So all these things have happened besides the change that has taken place in economics. So international trade is influencing not only the economics but political relationship between one thing that happens in the world is informed to the other part of the world in a fraction of a second minute. So that kind of a change is what international trade brings about. So trade benefits all economies of the world if they are participating in it, otherwise countries will miss out. So all countries today participate in trade. So if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel, post your comments, and click the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you very much.